and welcome to Our People, the podcast where we give space for Holdeman Stories. We focus on hope, healing, and inspiration. Connection, consciousness, and love are the driving motivations for this project. Remember to have grace for those who have chosen to speak out and share their experience. Please enjoy the story you will hear today.
Hello and welcome to Our People's Podcast. I'm Amanda, and today I am joined by Stuart Litwiller, and I'm going to let him tell us about himself.
Hi, I'm Stuart Litwiller. I live in Kitale, Kenya. I grew up in Michigan, Carson City, Michigan. I lived there for the first 28 years of my life. And then we moved with a young family to Murray, Kentucky. We were some of the first to move there. Joe Yoders and us moved at the same week, and they were family 6, we were family 7. So then that was March of 1990. I'm 62 years old. I'll be 63 this year. And so in April of 1990, we organized as a congregation, and I was put in as the church leader. And I filled that role for 3 years, 2 years as chairman, the third year as church secretary. And so I was very invested in the church, although I had been excommunicated. I was baptized in Michigan at age 13, and I don't remember a lot about that, what they call experience. I do remember having fear when I talked in front of the church. I just racked it up as nerves. I didn't know what it was. Nothing changed in my life. I'm talking about nothing. No prayer life, no Bible reading, nothing changed. I just went from being from a non-member to a member. At age 16, the panel time came. And I had made up my mind, I am completely done. I will not go in to visit with the ministers. I will not be a Mennonite. I'm going to leave home. And I went to sewing dinner. They had sewing back in those days, and they had a lunch afterwards. And one of the youth girls pursued me afterwards, and she said, "Stuart, are you going to go in for a visit?" And I said, "No, I don't plan to." And she said, "Well, I really think you should." And I think that was the first time I really felt like someone cared about me personally. And so I changed my mind. I went in and spilled my guts, and I was excommunicated immediately and had no clue how to find God. And so started visiting with a man there who eventually became a minister, Tim Buck. And I guess eventually, I don't know, I mean, I wanted to be saved. I felt lost. And, it wasn't too hard to come back to the church. So I was reaccepted. They asked me, "Is what you have now similar to what you had when you were baptized?" And yeah, I guess so. I mean, I didn't have anything then. I don't have anything now, but I didn't know that. I did not know that. And so I was reaccepted. I was excommunicated again at 18. After class, I went out to class and really enjoyed it, but did not want to come back home. Came back home and just like walked into sin, got excommunicated, was out for I don't know how long, reaccepted. And then at age 20, I got married. And at age like 22, I got excommunicated again. And so I never had assurance of salvation. I never had grace. I didn't know Jesus. It was just a form. And so then I think I got a little smarter. I wasn't so honest. And so then I managed to stay in the church until I was 49. And then it was quite an interesting situation. We were in Kentucky. I had been a church leader, fairly prominent person, according to my friends. And then one day, I was talking to my brother-in-law, who was a preacher in California, and he asked me if I had watched interest rates, and no, I hadn't paid particular attention. He said, well, they're really dropping. If you have debt, you might want to refinance. And so I casually mentioned it to my wife, and she just hit the fan and said, no, you're not refinancing because you don't know how to handle money. You'll end up borrowing extra money. We'll have more payments. And it was like, whoa. So I just shut up. By then I learned that, no sense of arguing. I left it for a week or so and brought it up again, and the same thing. And so this thing kind of escalated between us, and she went and talked to the deacons. And then when revival time came, they came and asked me, about my spiritual life. And I said, it's just about like always. And they said, well, it appears like you were born again and never converted. And that really, really upset me. They excommunicated me because I was born again and never converted. And I said, so was I the one that was supposed to figure that out at age 13? Or, this isn't my problem. And so then I tried to get back into the church for a while.
Well, I'm sorry.
And
So were they saying, did they mean that like you never grew as a Christian? Is that what they were saying?
they said I never, born again, he said, was like accepting Christ.
Right.
Being converted was converting from the old life to the new.
Okay. I thought that would happen naturally.
Well, I think it does.
Hey.
Okay. So at age 49, I was excommunicated for the fourth time. I had run several businesses in Kentucky, and so I knew a lot of outside people. And another thing they accused me of was having a lying spirit. And so I've done a lot of study throughout my life. I mean, I only went through grade 9, and that was in public school. That was prior to parochial schools. But I continue to study even to this day extensively. And so when they told me I had a lying spirit, I pushed back. I said, I don't understand that, because that's why my customers love me, is I don't tell lies. And they said, well, we're not accusing you of telling lies. We're accusing you of believing lies. And I said, okay, so how does that work? And they said, well, you have friends all over the conference, and you talk to them and tell them your side of the story, and they don't know the whole story like we do. So then they give you advice, and you believe that advice. And I said, oh, okay, so their advice is bad advice. They're telling me lies, and I believe the lies. Yeah, that's it. And I said, but I'm not telling the lies myself. No, we're not accusing you of telling the lies. I said, okay, so the lies are coming into my head, circling inside my head, turning into truth, and coming out of my mouth as the truth. I said, I guess that doesn't make any sense. And they didn't really like that, because what I have discovered in the Holdeman faith is that when you no longer fear them, they have to get rid of you, because the whole system is based on fear. And the whole system is a man-made, self-acclaimed religion. Okay, Amanda, have you ever been a school teacher?
I've actually, yes, I mean, for one class, but it's not in our Mennonite schools.
Okay, so let me ask you, if you gave your children a writing assignment on Monday and said, I want all of you to research the best way to raise a dog, write about it, all the way from puppyhood, all through the vaccinations, in case it's a female, having puppies, taking care of puppies, on, and the very best way to raise a dog. And on Friday, I'll pick up your essay. So on Friday at 3, you say, I'm going to pick up the essay. But at noon, you step out of the class briefly, and little Johnny gets up and waves his paper and says, I got an A. And the children are like, what? Yeah, I got an A. And if you don't agree with the way I have decided is the best way to raise dogs, you're wrong, because I have inspiration straight from above. Okay, what would you do with that student?
So who said I was wrong? The student or
No, if the student got up and graded his own paper and told the
okay,
other students,
right.
yeah, and you were out of the class.
Well, apparently I'm playing God if I'm doing that.
Well, that's what little Johnny Holdeman did. He got up and said, no one before me or after me will ever receive more inspiration than I have. I know how to serve God. If you don't agree with me, you're wrong, period.
Yes.
If you join my church and become excommunicated, straight to hell. If you hear about my church and don't join my church, straight to hell. Who gave little Johnny Holdeman the authority to make those decisions?
I don't. Okay, literally nobody did. And the fact that we believe that all of our lives is so fascinating.
Well, you know, there's a man by the name of John MacArthur, and I listened to one of his sermons the other day, and he talked about all the things that people will go through to be accepted and connected. You know, he remembered when his children were growing up, they would do anything to get the t-shirt that the other children were getting, Cub Scouts or Awana class or whatever it is. We will do just about anything to be, see, that's our primary needs in life, is to be accepted and connected. And so we will do just about whatever we need to do. And so when it comes to politics and religion, those people know that, because a lot of those leaders are manipulators. And so they know that once they suck you into the system, you will do just about whatever you have to do to stay there. And that's the sad thing about what I'm hearing now. I've been out of the church since I was 53, so it's almost 10 years. And I've been out of the church since I was 49. I was, that's going to be what now? 14, almost 14 years. But 53 was when they talked my wife into leaving me behind my back. And that's another whole story. And told my children not to have anything to do with me. And that's when I really crashed and burned, and I just almost went, I didn't know if I was going to make it, honestly.
Okay, but I
Because,
do want to, I just want in just a very brief synopsis. What were they hoping to accomplish by telling your wife to move out? Control.
well, that was interesting, because that's when I met Christ at age 53. And I was delivered from a spirit of fear. And after I was delivered from a spirit of fear, I started pushing back and asking, when is she going to come back? What's going to have to happen? And I pushed hard enough that the local preacher said, well, you know, we didn't make this decision on our own. We had Peace Ministries was involved. And so I said, okay, who's Peace Ministries? And he told me who it was. And I knew one of them. One of them was Greg Dick. So then I started calling Greg Dick. And Greg tried to pretend that he didn't know anything about it. He said, are you sure you're not doing the same thing to me that you are accusing me of? And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, falsely accusing me, because he said, I don't think Peace Ministries would have handled anything like that. That would have been more like the Triple C.
Right.
And he never would come out and say, no, I was not involved. The only thing he would say is, I don't remember that. And for a while, he tried to manipulate me. But by then, I was already deeply involved in, I had become a John Maxwell speaker, trainer, coach. And I was involved in Kenya in the mission. And I think by then I had taken my behavioral analyst lessons as a consultant. And so I recognized manipulation immediately. And so I didn't allow him to manipulate me. And then after that, he tried to become my friend. And so every time I talked to Greg Dick after that, he was like, hey, you know what? We might meet in heaven. We have our differences here, but it's very likely that we'll meet in heaven. And so it's probably a manipulation tactic also. But anyway, I kept pushing back, and pushing back. And Greg finally told me, I said, well, Greg, no one has ever told me what it's going to take for me to get my wife back. And he says, Stuart, don't you think if you'd have an experience with the Lord that could help? I said, bingo. That was the goal the whole time. They were hoping that I would come back to the church, because by then I was already going to another church. And that's an interesting story. I was losing confidence because I started to realize they don't want me in their church. And then the young preacher came to church one day and he was almost giddy. I was analyzing his behavior. He was almost giddy. I was like, okay, what's going on? Well, they had just been to annual meeting. He gets up in front and he says, we were told that we can now define sin, because you see, we're the bride of Christ. And so we can make rules that say what sin is, and God will honor that, because see, we're his bride. And I'm like, no. You've just become your own God. Don't fall for that. So after church, I talked to the other one, the older one, and I said, do you believe that you can make rules that define sin? And he said, that's what was preached, wasn't it? He evaded my question. I said, do you believe it? And he said, that's what was preached, wasn't it? I said, look, I'm out of here. I'm completely done. You have just become your own God. I went and talked to one of my friends. I said, you won't be seeing me anymore. I'm done. He said, what do you mean? I said, I'm not coming to a church where they play God. And I said, they already admitted in front of the pulpit that we can now define sin. And so I left and I started going to another church. And then eventually I got invited to be an outreach evangelist at another church. I went there in 2020, but that's when COVID started. And so we never really made that happen. But I continued to go there when I wasn't in Kenya. So now let's switch to leaving the Holdeman tribe and creating a new life. I think one of the things that's the most difficult is to deal with the pain and loss. In my case, I lost everything. I lost my wife. Eventually we divorced because I didn't have any trust. And I lost my relationship with my children. I lost my friends. I lost my society. And so you can Google it or go on YouTube, but there's 5 or possibly 7 stages of grief that we go through. And so during that time, if you don't have a connection with God, you have nowhere to go. And what I'm seeing is some of the people who come out of the Holdeman faith never really had a connection with God. They were just like I was. I got my connection after I came out. Okay, what happens then is the pain, it can be so great. You become so self-focused that you display narcissistic tendencies or symptoms, because you're dealing with all of this loss, you're dealing with grief, you're dealing with anger, you're dealing with bitterness, you're dealing with depression, one by one, and you just don't know how to get outside of your own head.
Okay, so I'm hoping you're going to get there and tell me how you show narcissistic tendencies.
Yeah, narcissistic tendencies are just self-focused. That's what a narcissist is.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, completely self-focused.
Because you're caring for the first time, probably.
Yeah. But you're also replaying what happened over and over, especially when you go through that stage called bargaining and saying, if I would have done this, what would have happened? Well, maybe if I'd have said this, maybe things would have been different. And that's a stage of grief. That's one of the 5 stages or 7 stages of overcoming grief, is bargaining. And so, it's just an absolute nightmare. It just goes round and round and round and round in your head. And for weeks and sometimes years, and sometimes people never get out of it. Because like John Maxwell said, there's 4 ways that people change. When they have enough pain, when they have enough understanding, when they have enough, when they're given enough tools, I'm going to say. And right now, I don't remember the fourth one. I didn't write them down. But for me, I think it took all four. And so then the other thing that I realized is I had no voice. After they excommunicated me at age 49, they told everybody I had a lying spirit. And they told everybody that I was so tricky that they shouldn't listen to me at all, because I might deceive them. And so I remember even going to Sunday school and participating. One of my friends said it would be better if you said nothing in Sunday school, because even if you read a Bible verse, he said, in the back of our minds, we're wondering, what are you really trying to do?
Oh, this was your friend?
Yeah, it was my friend. And so, I solved that problem. I quit going to church.
Right.
But some people aren't able to quit because of whatever situation. Maybe their marriage is still somewhat viable, or
Right.
they're just in bondage in their brain, that it's been etched into their brain that you have to be a Mennonite to be saved, and they can't let loose of that. And so dealing with the loss is a big thing.
Well, the big one
And
is you're going to hell if you leave the church.
yeah, of course. And that's scratched into your brain from childhood, and so you have to overcome that. You have to realize, is that true or not? And in my case, then, a divorce. If you're divorced, you're going to hell.
Right.
So is that true or not? Well, you do a lot of study, and the Bible says in John 14:6, I was reading one day, and I'd been asking myself, what is truth? For crying out loud, what is truth? Well, finally, I read in John 14:6, it said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And I thought, bingo, Jesus is the truth. And when I allow Jesus to fill me, and I allow him to guide me, he will guide me into all truth. And so that was a really freeing for me. And I started to find my voice in a very unique way. I was playing around on WhatsApp one day, and I hit the status button, and I said, oh, wow, here, people are statusing. Let me read what they've statused. And so then I sent a status. I learned how, and didn't think any more of it. And the next day I was sitting there in my chair. I typically get up in the morning, read the Bible, and meditate for a while. And something came to me, and I thought, cool, I could put that in my status. So I developed this habit of statusing, and then somebody told me how to check and see who's checking your statuses. And so then I started checking them, and then I got bored with the whole thing, and I said to God, when can I quit this? He said, when the number of viewers gets under a certain number, you can stop. I said, that's easy to do. And so I started getting really, really blunt about how I felt about the Holdeman Church, and the viewer number went up.
Yes. Oh no.
And so then I realized I have found my voice. And that's something that's so important for people who leave the tribe, is to find their voice again in some form or fashion. Now, let me talk about that. For a while, when I was sending text messages to prominent preachers, I would literally shake. My hand would shake before I hit the send button. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, yeah, that's common, because the spirit of fear has controlled us. We know the right answer that's going to keep us out of trouble, and we know the truth. We make the choice. Am I going to am I going to give the answer that keeps me out of trouble, or am I going to speak the truth that could have potential danger? He said, I remember one man told him that when he was asked a question, and he said, immediately the truth came to me, and then immediately the answer came that I could give that would be safe. And he said, when I made the decision to tell the truth, he said, my whole body shook. But eventually that goes away.
That's how you knew it was the right one.
And well, no, the way I know what's the truth is the truth will set you free. And so over here in Africa, I do a radio broadcast every week, and I also do a training session at our restaurant every week. We have a restaurant called Proof, People Restoring Our Own Future. And my Kenyan wife manages that one. And we have a program with the college, the local college, and we get students from the food and beverage department, and we train them. And so it's a good program. We have probably 20 to 28 employees most of the time. And our average attendance at the restaurant would be, if the college is not in session, it'll drop down to like 500 or 600 people per day. On our busier days, we could easily go over 1,000.
So you are very
And so
busy then.
we're extremely busy.
Yes.
I've added on 2 times already.
Very good. Okay.
We call it the Madhouse.
What kind of
we
food
serve
do you serve?
African food, ugali, suja, which is like collard greens, I think, skuma wiki, which is, I think, kale, and then chicken, French fries, kebabs are kind of like a little snack. They're like a little log of minced meat, they call it. We'd call it hamburger. Deep fried, and then meat pies, which they call samosas, and African tea, and black tea, and coffee, and sodas, and just, yeah, a lot of stuff.
Very good.
Yep. So there's where I do my training session every Saturday morning. And so what I teach people is how to be free from oppression in the 4 primary areas of life: spiritually, physically, emotionally, and financially.
Very good.
And so, I don't know if you've ever heard of a man by the name of Wayne Dyer.
Yes, love him.
Yeah, Wayne Dyer, David R. Hawkins.
No, not that one.
Wayne Dyer refers to David Hawkins.
Okay.
David Hawkins is the man who wrote the book, The Map of Consciousness.
That sounds
And
familiar.
I have a whiteboard that I use, and I always include the map of consciousness. And
Okay.
so he had a system of understanding what people's energetic log was. And in the lower energy levels, which he measured it in hertz, HERTZ,
Yes.
those people are called in the survival paradigm.
Okay. Give me some of those emotions.
Okay. The emotions are humiliation, blame, despair, regret, anxiety, craving, hate, and scorn.
Yes, I am familiar with that map.
That map, okay.
Yes.
And so I always use this map just because when you're freeing people from oppression, you're trying to bring them out of the fear zone, the lower zone. Those people are dominated by fear. They don't know it. That was just like I was the first 53 years of my life. And their view of life is, at the lower end, it's life is miserable, life is evil, life is hopeless, it's tragic, it's frightening, it's disappointing. And then as your energy comes up, you become antagonistic and demanding. But you're still operating out of fear, because fear has its roots in loss. What am I going to lose? When people sense that they could lose something, they try to control. And so they operate out of manipulation and intimidation in order to dominate people, to dominate and control people. And you will still see that even amongst excommunicated Holdeman Mennonites, because they have never connected with the love, and they've never connected with the spirit. And so they're still in the mindset of, I have to get it right. And so they can go through all kind of calisthenics, listen to theologians for hours. And one man recently, he attacked me quite viciously because I had dared to question if hell was the way it was taught to us. I had listened to some Don Keithley videos, and I had posted one, and I had posted it with the intent of getting some conversation going. Because when I listen to a new concept like that, I don't just jump on the bandwagon. I set that on the back burner. I let it simmer. If more things go into the pot, fine. If I eventually get more information that that's an erroneous belief, the pot just gets slid off. And so I didn't have any intention of just jumping out of believing that hell was real. His video is called Illusions of Hell. And Don Keithley does not believe in hell as the Christian society teaches it. And he has done extensive study. But what happens is, now we'll go into psychology a little bit, when people are not emotionally intelligent, everything that comes into your mind comes into the emotional side of your brain first, which is called the survival part of your brain. And if it's a new idea, it's a scary idea, they go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so you typically scare people off, or they say, oh yeah, that sounds interesting. And maybe something I should study. And you can immediately tell that their mind has just gone into neutral, or they start attacking you. So some of these guys will attack you relentlessly. Accusations, condemnation, and harsh judgment. And so it's because they have a bias, and they're trying to protect their bias. Because if you're looking for the truth, you don't have to attack anything. You can say, that's an interesting concept. I've never thought of that before.
I like the what if. What if?
Yeah, what if? Yeah, maybe it is, maybe it's not. I don't have, and see, the religiosity mindset says I have to make a decision, I have to make a judgment. And that was what we were taught as Holdemans. I have to know where you are. I have to make a decision. Are you in the church, or are you out of the church? Are you a believer of the church, or are you not a believer of the church? I have to know if you have a voice or not. I have to know if you're a valid human. And if you're not a valid human, and we lose our voice. And that's the first thing they do with scary people when they bring them up as a church concern, and then they put them on church repentance. That invalidates your voice. And then if they go so far as to say, this man has a lying spirit, then you're really invalidated. Then you become a scary person. And it was actually one of my Holdeman Mennonite friends that said, and Stuart, I'll bet they accused you of having a lying spirit, didn't they? And I said, how did you know that? And he said, because that's what they accused him of many years ago. And actually, the way they accused him of it was they told him they thought he was having an adulterous affair. And he said, no, I'm not having an adulterous affair. Yes, brother, we believe you are. And he said, no, I'm not. Well, then we believe you're having you have a lying spirit, because we believe that you've had an adulterous affair. Actually, that happened to, I've heard this firsthand from two different people. One of them was a deacon, and they accused him. They just make it up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's completely fabricated.
No, you forgot. They can decide what sin is. They have been given that because they're the bride of Christ. So no, so we better back up there.
Yeah, okay. So then we get into dealing with the loss, finding my voice, and and I've had friends that have tracked me, and even as I was statusing, I was still in those stages of grief.
Yes.
And so later on, they said, we can see how much you have grown in Christ, because they were tuned into the Spirit. They could see where I was at. They didn't judge me for it. And we can't judge ourselves for it, because this is part of we finally have to get to that point of acceptance. We accept what happened. We take responsibility for our own life again, and we go on and create a new life out of the rubble. And so that's where deconstructing and reconstructing comes in. We have to deconstruct the beliefs that we have that no longer serve us. The one true visible church. You know, it took me time to deconstruct that. But when I come to that realization that little Johnny graded his own paper, then it was pretty easy to deconstruct. He had no right to do that. And as a teacher, I would have thrown his butt out of class. And so I don't know what God will do with him. That's between him and God. But reconstructing then beliefs that bring us freedom and joy and peace. And so this takes time because it involves changing our core beliefs. And our core beliefs are a combination of who we are as an individual, our temperament, our brain type, our personality, our experiences in life, the life-forming events that we've gone through. These all form our core beliefs or our biases. And so it's not even feasible that that's going to happen overnight, because if we changed our core beliefs overnight, then one day we'd be a hardworking, honest individual, and the next day we'd say, there's no sense of doing that. That's no longer my core belief. And so we'd be very unstable as humans. And so to go through that process of analyzing, and some people pick things apart, you know, piece by piece, and say, does this serve me? No, it doesn't. Does this serve me? Well, kind of it does, and kind of it doesn't. And some people just take a bulldozer and bulldoze the whole thing down, start over from scratch. And so I don't know that any one way is better than another. I think it depends on your brain type. And so, you know, that's another rabbit trail I could run off on. My consulting coach was actually the one who helped me to figure out that I was in deep, deep trouble. And that was after my first wife left me. After she came back, I spent a lot of money on this consulting. We had weekly videos. He did a brain type analysis or assessment on me online, which I can do now. And it's very, very extensive. It's better than any temperament book you've ever read. It's just amazing. And he said, Stuart, you're not operating out of your primary brain type. He said, your primary brain type is you are a attractor helper. And he said, you're a brain type that you have changed to, and we call it our intentional brain type, is, okay, so Amanda, you can be one person around the campfire. You can be this happy-go-lucky, friendly, talkative, but then when you get on the job, you become a slave driver because you realize that I have to put on this work clothes to be successful. And so I'm an attractor helper, and but I have pushed my attracting completely down, and now I have what's called the taking brain type, which is the choleric. And I'm completely up at the top. He said, you're called a jungle warrior, a jungle fighter. He said, this tells me that you have had serious, serious challenges in your life, and you have become a person who is going to overcome by hook or by crook. And so it was completely true. If you went fishing with me, you thought I was the most happy, laid back, laughing, joking. I told a lot of jokes because that's how I dealt with my pain, is laughing. If you came onto the job with me, I'm like, this is what needs to be done. This is what needs to be done by the end of today. This is what needs to be done by the end of the week. If it's not done, there's going to be problems.
Oh, what did you say that was called?
The taking brain type.
Taking, okay.
Taking is a results oriented.
Okay.
It's an extrovert. Think Donald Trump.
Okay.
Donald Trump goes and interviews the little CNN girl, and he said, first of all, I just want to tell you you're pathetic. Okay, what he's doing is looking for results. He's looking to see how she reacts. As soon as she reacts, he knows how to handle her. All right. the attracting brain type is people oriented. They're not results oriented. They're still an extrovert, but they're more the hey, we could do this, people. We could do this. Not that I'm going to do it, but I could find people to do it. I could attract people to do it. Okay. And the helping brain type is the predominant emotion for the taking brain type is anger. That's the first one. And not anger like they're angry all the time, but they're very direct, take charge kind of people. They don't fool around. They come in to buy a pickup. Hey, I need a pickup. What do you got?
Yes.
Okay. All right. The attracting one comes in and wants to tell you his life story and ask you about your dog and ask you if you play golf. Okay. The helping brain type and the attracting, the accompanying emotion with the attracting brain type is optimism. The accompanying emotion with the helping brain type is patience. That's your service people. You go to Walmart, you say, I need to return this. Oh, okay, let me help you. Do you have your receipt? Yes, I've got my receipt. And they are helping you. They are an introvert, people-oriented person.
Okay.
All right. And then the preserving brain type is another results-oriented introvert. They would be like the doctors, the architects, the engineers, and they have a hard time making a decision because they don't know if they have enough information. And so the accompanying emotion is the emotion of fear. Not that they live in fear, but they don't know if they have enough information. So can I make this decision? I may not have enough information. So once you understand yourself and once you understand your partners and once you understand your teammates, then you know how to work with them.
Okay, and what is this method is called what?
It's called well, it's Steven Sisler, and he's I could send you an email. Yeah, and then I could do an assessment, and then I'd give you like a 45-minute debrief. And you would know more about yourself than you have ever known. You would know why you think like you do. Now, that doesn't say that I can anticipate your behavior, because there are so many things that affect our behavior. So sometimes people get into this study and they say, oh, now I know who you are, because they read your body language and they say, this person is this, this, this. No, because somebody might come dashing through the crowd, pushing people out of the way. Excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. And you say, oh, taking brain type. No, that's not the problem at all. They've got diarrhea. and so, there's a lot of things that affect our behavior. And even for people coming out of the Holdeman Church, there's a lot of things that affect their behavior. The preserving brain type wants to save. The helping brain type is normally high in the need to feel safe and secure. They don't share their heart with anybody because it makes them vulnerable. And so nobody knows what they really think. The taking brain type is like, get out of my life. They look angry, but they're not angry. They're just direct. They're results oriented. This doesn't work for me. I'm done. Adios, hasta luego. All right. And the attracting brain type, they have their own set of challenges, but we're not on that today. We're on this other thing. So then we went down a rabbit trail, but that's okay. We'll probably come back to it, you and I, at some other point in time.
Okay.
So then we get into the area of spirituality versus religiosity. And that's where people have to recognize that God is a spirit. They that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Religiosity says, and I might step on some toes here, we have to follow the inerrancy of the scripture. There is no such thing as the inerrancy of the scripture, because we read it through our bias. We read it through our experiences of life. And so the Bible, in my opinion, is like a huge mirror. If I have love and grace inside of my heart, when I read the Bible, I see a God of love and grace. I see a God who says, I'm like the hen that wants to cover the chicks with my feathers. I'm the God in heaven who is just waiting to open up the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing on you. And the person who has accusations in his own heart and condemnation in his own heart, he reads that from the Bible. He sees the verses that say, unless you do such and such, and except ye be born again and be baptized. And then you can get into hours of discussion about the proper way to be baptized. You see what I mean? And so some of these are things that we have to grow through. And when you're in the bottom end of the energy scale on the David Hawkins map of conscious energy scale, and you're still operating out of fear, you're going to see your friend who is excommunicated, possibly making a mistake, and you've got to rescue him. You've got to stop that. You're going down the wrong trail. You're preaching cheap grace. And so, but they're completely operating out of fear. And then you send them a message back. They don't even read the message like you sent it. They read it out of their bias. They read it and saying, but I believe he's going off the rails. And so this is what I see. And so you point that out to them that this is not what I said. That doesn't make any difference. They don't apologize, but I'm just trying to help you. Okay.
You know a few people like that.
Yeah. And they're well-meaning people.
Mm-hmm.
But they're still operating out of fear. And the way you can tell that is they tend to go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And if they go into fight mode, they tend to fight with, it's called ad hominem, or a logical fallacy. And so a logical fallacy is, supposing you come to me and you say, Stuart, I've got a concern about this and that and the next thing. And I say, why are you so critical? I overlook the concern that you've given to me, and I attacked your character. And that is probably one of the number one manipulation tactics of the Holdemans. You can bring a concern to the staff, and they say, you know, I've noticed something about your spirit. They overlook the concern. And so in any organization, any relationship, we have blind spots. And a blind spot is when your impact is different than your intent. And now I've observed you as a person, and so I'm going to use you as an example. I don't think you're going to mind. And so I meet you for the first time, and I say, you know, you're really a beautiful woman for a Hispanic. And you say, why did he say Hispanic? And I meant it for a compliment, and it's really it's a slam. Okay. The only way I know that is if you give me feedback. You say, Stuart, why did you have to add for as a Hispanic? And I say, oh, I never even thought about it. I just noticed that you were a Hispanic and you're a beautiful lady. And so I added it on as an afterthought, but I will never do it again. Okay. What we learned as Holdemans is you don't take feedback. Because you're the one true visible church, you're doing it right. If you admit to doing it wrong, then you're a smudge on the church. And so it's top down. The staff doesn't take feedback. And so then parents don't take feedback. And so then nobody takes feedback. And how will you ever grow? How will you see your blind spots without taking feedback? You don't. You absolutely can't. And so you know, those are the things that we have to deconstruct and reconstruct. And so another coach, counselor that I've talked to extensively is actually writing a book about God's natural laws, because he said, obviously, religiosity isn't working. And we talk almost every day. And what I realized is I saw this meme, I guess you call them a meme. All these men were standing around with these huge pencils, and they were drawing boxes. And Jesus, I mean, I think it was Jesus because he had a crown of thorn. He had his pencil upside down, and he was erasing the lines. And I realized that there's 46,000 different denominations. They have one thing in common. They're all the right one. It's all these men drawing boxes. And if you stay within my box, I approve of you. Jesus come along and he erases those things and says, come on to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Forget the rules of man, forget needing to have the approval of man. But see, that's deeply wired into us, the need for acceptance and connection. But when you finally recognize and realize that in your own heart from God, that I'm approved by God, it's like another one of my friends said, you become a little bit stubborn. You don't just do everything that everybody tells you to do. You don't believe everything that everybody tells you to believe. Because my number one, and I'm saying this for myself, my number one goal in life is to stay connected. Once I got connected at age 53 by faith, I said, I will never get disconnected again if I can help it. And I can help it because God is faithful. And so sometimes he says, Stuart, come on, we're going to go do something. And I'm like, oh, I'm not so sure I want to do that. But then as I draw back, I start to lose my power. I said, wait, I'm willing, I'll come. Let me repent of my stubbornness. Let me repent of my unwill. Let me let go. And that's another big thing of Wayne Dyer. As we talked earlier, we talked about Wayne Dyer. The hindrance to us of getting to the upper level of the map of consciousness is letting go. You know, I tell people every week, if you want to get into the lower level, it's your choice. Just live a lie, tell a lie, be unforgiving, and hang on to past hurts. Hang on to your ideology. And you can stay in the lower level. But what you have to accept then is your predominant emotional state is going to be that of humiliation. You're going to have blame. You're going to have despair. You're going to have grief. You're going to have fear, because if you tell a lie or live a lie, you're always living in that knowledge that somebody may find out who I really am. And so you're going to have regret. You're going to have a disappointment. You're going to have craving. You're going to be antagonistic towards people who might expose you for what you are. You're going to feel vengeful. You're going to be denying. You're going to be punitive. You're going to be disdainful, condemning, vindictive, despising. You can live in the lower energy zone if you want to, but that's what you have to accept as your predominant emotional state and your view of life and your view of God. Now, once you get to 200 hertz, we start living in courage/faith, because it takes faith to have courage. It takes courage to have faith. All right, so now God says, come on, go with me, Amanda. And you say, I don't know where we're going, but I trust you. So I'm going to say what you want me to say. I'm going to do what you want me to do. And when you do that, you have affirmation from your source. You start to see life as feasible. You start to see opportunities. You start to realize that God is empowering me. He's giving me balance. He's making me to have hope and inspiration and optimism and forgiveness. I can let go of all those other things. I can live in love. I can live in forgiveness. I can let go of the things that keep me from going up. And so you see, these are the things that coming out of the lower energy zone, coming into the upper energy zone. Once you've lived in the upper energy zone, you're never going back. And so people say, do you believe in once saved, always saved? And I said, why would I ever get unsaved? That's got to be the stupidest idea of anything I've ever heard. I'm connected with my power source. If I get disconnected, I'm going to go back into confusion. I'm going to go back into regret. I'm going to go back into having a tragic life. Does that make sense? No. And so, but in this state of learning, you explore new ideas. And the truth never minds being questioned. It's the lies that hate being questioned. And so you can ask any question you want. You can say, God, is hell like I've always been taught? And so you can do extensive study on that. Now, I haven't come to a complete decision on what I think about hell, but I will tell you this. I'm not going to threaten people with hell, because when you use intimidation and manipulation in any form, you are practicing witchcraft. If you're doing it to dominate and control people, okay? A lot of religions are practicing witchcraft. They don't know it. But I'm not going there. So I'm not threatening people with hell. I am trying to connect them with their power source.
Or how about the curses also? That is also a form of it. When people tend to leave, or they're leaving, or they're looking to leave, and they get said, well, this is, what's going to happen to you if you leave the church. That's putting a curse on someone. And
That's a word curse.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Have you ever got a package in the mail that didn't belong to you?
Sure.
Okay. You wrote on the package, return to sender.
Right.
That's what you do with the word curse. You just say return to sender.
Exactly.
I'm not accepting this. And when people understand that, it gives them power. The other day, I was discussing with some excommunicated friends of mine, and I was discussing the fact that I don't have a good relationship with my own children. I have a great relationship with my stepchildren. And, and I'm the same person. So over here in Africa, I am highly respected. I teach in prisons, I teach at schools, I teach at churches, I teach on the radio, I teach at Proof. My wife and children love me dearly. I'm the same person, but over there in that setting, I'm despised and rejected and held in contempt. And so I said, I don't really blame my children, because they were taught to believe that this is what they were supposed to do. All right. And so I said, what can we do about this? And this one person said, what's coming to my mind right now is King David prayed, Lord, avenge me of mine adversaries. And so we had a prayer together online, and we said, Lord, avenge me of mine adversaries. Those people who have brainwashed my children into thinking that they can't have a relationship with me. And so a person who's still in the fear zone, religiosity, would say, oh, but you're supposed to pray for your enemies. You're supposed to love the ones who despise. You see what I mean?
I did pray.
And I think there's a time for that.
Well, no, but you did pray. You prayed for them.
I did pray. Yes, of course. And so then another thing, moving down through my list, I don't know how much time we have here, but I wrote up a little list, and you just put up your hand like this, like my interviewer does on the radio, and I'll know that time is up. But I was talking to a person yesterday, and they were talking about, do we live out of ego, which is edging God out, or do we live out of trust? Edging God out is when I think I have to take control. I can't trust God to orchestrate my life. I can't trust God to see me through this problem. I have to take control of this situation. And we all struggle with living out of our ego. And that is something that, as we are born again, and we begin to surrender our life to God and trust in Him, that certain situations come, and I say, am I going to try to figure this out, or am I going to trust in the Lord with all my heart? And we say, in the past, it's worked better if I trusted the Lord with all my heart. So let me do that one right from the start. Let me not wallow in all this mess. And that's also, you could say, living out of fear or living out of faith, which is part of that map of consciousness. Yes. And a couple more points here. This is from my behavioral analyst. Go ahead.
Okay, so I want to make just a small. So I went through a time where I needed to stop. I needed to stop calling God, because I could not handle. Every time I said God, I saw the God I was taught with, that Punisher, that,
Yes. Okay. Yes.
So I went through a time where I had to stop saying God, and I went with source, which you said the power source, my source, source of all creation, the source of everything.
Yes.
So I went, and that is what I called. I switched the name, or God, for source, and I called that for probably, I think, over a year, until I could come back and I could then see that I wasn't triggered by the word God anymore. And it was okay, because I understood that was the same source energy, and that it was love. And oh, I'm telling you, after I was able to move past that and see that and have, I'm there is no words for the love that abounds. And I have just enjoyed my journey once I could stop seeing God as a punisher.
Absolutely. You either decide that God is the God of love that the Bible says he is. He's like the hen that wants to cover his chicks with his wings. He's like the one who wants to open the windows of heaven. Or you think that God is waiting to condemn every man, woman, and child who doesn't dot all the I's and cross all the T's.
Which is a very legalistic God.
That's a very legalistic God.
Yeah.
And the people say, well, Stuart, you have to follow the Bible. And I say, but look, in Romans 1, 19 through 21, it said very clearly that even in observing the earth and sky, we can see the divine nature of God. This tells us that God's spirit communicates with our spirit apart from the written word. Now, there's a Bible verse that talks about that. It says, God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. That's John 4:24. So if your truth doesn't line up with the Spirit of God, and what should the Spirit of God be? It's the spirit of reconciliation, because he invested in mankind. He sent Jesus. That's a huge investment. And I came to that realization as a business person. If I make a big investment, I want a big return. I'm not going to invest $500,000 in a business and be happy with a 25-cent return. And so out of 7 billion people, and God invested Jesus, his only son, is he going to be happy with a 25,000 people return? No, absolutely not. That's ludicrous. Do you think God is that bad of a businessman that he doesn't know how to make a good investment? He doesn't know how to restore people. He doesn't know how to redeem people. He doesn't know how to reconcile them. And then when we're reconciled to God, we become a reconciler. It takes a free person to free people. But until you're free, spiritually, physically, emotionally, and financially, how do you teach someone else to be free? You don't. You have your bias. You're hanging on to your belief that's not working. Another verse is that I really teach a lot is Luke 17, 20 and 21. And because Christianity is falling apart, and even over here in this country, I was talking to a boy the other day. His dad converted from being a Muslim to a Christian. And now he said, I wished we could do away with the word Christian and just use the word believer, because he said Christians tend to just fight over details. And so Luke 17, 20 and 21 addresses that. The Pharisees is asking Jesus, where is the kingdom of heaven? Is it over here or is it over there? 46,000 different denominations. They have one thing in common. They're all the right one. So is this the kingdom of heaven or is this the kingdom of heaven? He said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. The kingdom of heaven is within you. And that's what the message that people need to understand. Now, I think it was Albert Einstein. He said, people claim that they want freedom, but freedom requires responsibility, and responsibility terrifies them. So really, I'm paraphrasing this. Really what they want is somebody else to tell them what to do. And so we see that. We see that even with people coming out of the Holdeman religion. They become disillusioned with the Holdemans for whatever reason. They hook up the horses to the wagon. They said, we're going to find the truth. Well, they march out of the city wall. They find somebody else with a horse and wagon that has gone to find the truth. They start visiting, comparing notes, and they say, hey, this ain't so bad. They unhook the horses, they circle the wagons, and they create Holdemanism 2.0.
Yeah.
And it's very, very little different from what they came out of. They may join another organization that's very structured, and they have very similar beliefs. They might even have the head covering. whatever it is that makes them feel comfortable. But our comfort zone is the enemy of learning and growing. So we've taken up, I don't know how much time. I haven't paid any
No,
attention.
that's okay. We're when my husband comes in that door with my 4-year-old, that's when we're done. Okay, keep going. They can lock this up into 2 different episodes if they need to.
Okay, so this is one more point that I wanted to bring out. And this comes from my consulting coach. He said, in the science of human behavior, our values determine our behavior. And so when you value your husband, your behavior reflects that. When you value God and your relationship with God, your behavior reflects that. When you value people, and this is from John Maxwell now, people of value, or in other words, people who have God within, it's no longer I, but Christ in me. People of value add value to people.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that I learned. That's why.
There you
Okay,
are.
are you back?
Yep, I'm here.
I had to switch. My electricity went off, so I switched to my Kenyan line and used that as a mobile hotspot.
Okay.
So anyway, John Maxwell said people of value add value to people, and that's why I got involved with John Maxwell, is because when I was here in Kenya the first time, I enjoyed it a lot, but I was here all by myself. That's a whole nother story of how that happened. But I was here by myself. I had a moment of anxiety, and I said, God, how am I going to be safe? And he said, add value. And when he told me add value, he opened up my mind. He said, if you add value, you will become valuable. If you become valuable, people will take care of you. And so that dictates everything that I do now. I add value. When I go to Proof in the morning, Proof is our restaurant.
Right.
I go through and greet everybody. The students, I either fist bump them or give them hugs. The guy at the counter, we always shake hands. There's a Kenyan style of shaking hands. I go back in and talk to the cooks. You know, the customers, when they come in, I talk to them and try to add value to them. And so you can't give something, though, that you don't have. And when you still have fear, it's going to leak out in your energy. But when you have love and joy and peace and righteousness in the Holy Spirit, it leaks out. You can't hide it. And so these people who come out of an organization but never pursue truth, they say, well, I've got it. And they hang on to it, and then they have to defend it. And so when you're pursuing Jesus, that's a lifelong process.
So that is a perfect example of being born again, but never being converted. Where they hold on to it.
Yeah, born again and not converted. They don't convert from the old life to the new. You've got a good memory. So anyway, that is briefly my story. And I don't know if you have questions. And I say briefly, it's probably been on for quite a while now.
No, an hour and a half. Okay, so I am fascinated. Okay. So what you said that, okay, you have a farm. And what do you farm?
We have a small farm, and we raise vegetables for our restaurant. We grow suja, skooma, dania, pili pili hoho, which is green peppers. We didn't have good luck with tomatoes, but you can buy tomatoes. We grow a little white corn. It's called maize, but we only have 1.5 acres, and the back half is going to be where I'm going to build my house.
Okay.
And so we're only farming like 3/4 of an acre.
So
and then I also what?
No, is this a ways away from you or not really?
No, it's not very far.
Okay.
It's near the Katali airstrip. The Katali airstrip on Google Maps. You're within walking distance of our farm.
Okay, very good.
And then I also do farming in Uganda. I have a friend who is a businessman here. He does interpreting for me. His name is Joseph Lamai. He came from Uganda originally, So he's a Uganda-Kenyan citizen, dual citizenship. And Uganda went through a lot of trauma. 15 years of fighting, lost approximately 2 million people. They had 8 different presidents in 2 years. So there's thousands of acres of farmland that's laying idle because that generation of people is probably, a lot of them are killed off, moved to the cities. And so we're going over there to try to help people learn how to do modern farming.
Okay.
And so it's a huge challenge. It's not for the part, but it's I think it'll be rewarding, as most huge challenges are.
Very good.
So we're farming about 100 acres this year, and it's difficult. It's remote. We have a farm manager over there. We have a couple people doing custom farming over there. I have a tractor and plow and planter. He has a tractor and plow. We're doing custom farming because the way they plow is with horses and with ox and a one bottom plow.
I wondered
And they
about
might
that.
own 150. They might own 150 acres and only farm 5 acres of it because that's all they can get over.
Right.
And
Wow.
so we're trying to free them from oppression financially.
Yes.
But as we move in that area, of course, I will work in spiritually and physically and emotionally because life is holistic.
Yes. Very good. Beautiful.
And yeah, so I have a busy life and I have purpose and I have fulfillment, which I think is very necessary. You have to have a meaningful work to have emotional and mental health.
Yeah, very good. Absolutely. Like I had mentioned when we were setting up this interview, is the thing I miss, which, okay, and I would like to say this to everybody out there, is that when you leave your upbringing like we did, you go through that loss. So I was 22, 20, I showed up to my 23rd birthday in my non-Mennonite clothes, okay, for that. So that's the first time. Stuart left at 49, 49, correct? 49.
Well, I got excommunicated at 49, but I never really left until 53.
Okay, so see, and no matter what, you still go through the stages of grief. You still lose everything, or if not everything, most everything. And it is still a process. But Stuart is saying this, I have said this, everybody on our podcast has said this, that it is so worth it. It is so, there is just no words to describe when you get the autonomy to have that relationship with God or source yourself, with no one in the way telling you whether you are deceived or whether you have it. But you get to experience it for your first, no, but I'll make this disclaimer, but a lot of times for the first time, you get to experience the freedom of God. And yes, I know we get labeled as, heretics and having lying spirits. So you can't trust what we're saying because we're all deceived. But I am telling you, we are not. And it is a freedom that we would give anything for. And that's why, like Stuart said, we're never going back. We do not want to go back into a box where someone else claims to have the authority over us to tell us whether we are free or not. We get to experience it.
I have a YouTube about that.
Oh, you do?
I have a YouTube channel called Stuart Litwiller.
Okay.
And the last one I made was win-win decision making, the balance between authority and responsibility, and sowing and reaping. It's only 5 minutes and 20 seconds.
I'll go check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So very good. But that loss. I know this young lady, and she is considering leaving. She's going to leave. She's way too far along on her path. She's going to leave, but she has so much fear about what she's going to walk through, and she wants to stay until she's past that, and she, I guess, maybe is going to miss that step, but unfortunately, I don't think anybody gets to miss that step.
No. You have to do it afraid.
Yeah,
and that's one of the things that I've learned in all of my different studies and the classes I've gone to and the leadership things, that we have to do it afraid. Almost any opportunity that you take, you're never ready. You're
Okay, I
never
missed that
completely
word. We have
ready.
to do it afraid. I love that. So any big, basically step in our life, anything that's probably going to be worth anything, we have to do it afraid.
That's right.
See, and then you get to look at life and you get to say, "Oh, that scares me." Okay, yes, I'm doing it. 2
And the
feet, here
thing of
we
it
come.
is, I want to give you another tip. When you fail, you're not really failing if you've learned, and learning is winning. So at the end of the day, you can say, I was so stupid, I failed, I made a big mistake, I'm such a dummy, I'll never make it. Or you can say, guess what? I learned one more way not to do something. That means I'm getting closer to figuring out how to do it.
Yep.
We have some failings. We have some failures over in Uganda. I'm not looking at them as failures. I'm looking at them as learning experiences. I bought a planter when I was in the US. My wife and my partner bought it for me, so I didn't get to look at it. I didn't see it until the day we were planting. I said, how do we adjust the population? I was the only person there that had ever seen a planter. They said, we don't know. We've got plates here. And I said, well, let's look at the plates. I said, the seeds are way too small for the holes. We're going to be planting doubles. So next year, we're going to either have different seed size or we're going to have different plate size. We are going to farm different because I've been picking my brains of my friends in the US, and they said, with that type of soil, don't farm it deep. And that's a whole nother conversation. I'm learning. Okay, we bought some seed from Uganda. It was what they call fake seed. It didn't germinate well.
Oh, wow.
So next year we'll bring it from Kenya. I'm learning.
Yes.
I'm not giving up. I'm learning.
Right. You're just adjusting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are things that we've done. And see, so many people, when you come out of that mindset of we are the one true visible church, they are afraid to admit that what I've done isn't working as well as it could have. Let me try something else.
Right.
Because it's etched into our brain. You can't admit that you've done wrong because it might besmirch the image of the church.
Okay.
And as a free person in Christ, you say, hey, guess what, folks? I messed up and I'm sorry.
Yes.
And I'm going to try to do better.
I have noticed that the shame has just falls away. It's like you're okay to admit you were wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have another question for you. I have another friend who I actually asked her to be on the podcast, and she's like, Amanda, if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said yes. She says, but my father recently had some medical issues that I had gone home for, and Sunday morning they were listening. They had the local sermon playing. And she said, at the end of it, she goes, he spoke on love, on Corinthians, okay? She goes, and at the end of that sermon, he says, she goes, his voice changed. Like you could tell the energy changed. His voice changed. And he says, I just have to address something. I'm paraphrasing, so I could get it wrong. But he said, I have to address something. He said, these people are people that leave the church and they go down the road and they go to another church or whatever. And they say, I have found the freedom. I have learned this and it has just given me freedom in Christ. He said, those people are deceived. They are deceived. They do not know what they're talking about. And therefore they cannot see the way anymore. You cannot basically trust them, right? Whether he said that or not, that's what he should have said. Okay. So she said that like just the whole thing changed, like what she felt with her folks, her dad kind of got like fidgety in a way, and maybe that he needed to defend something. And she says, she went to her room and was like, okay, hit her Bible study and stuff like that. And so, okay. So she said, had you asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said absolutely, because she's a churchgoer. She in her own, church she goes to now, things like that. She says she's been out for years. She's a beautiful person. She has just grown and she is amazing in Christ. Okay. This woman is she's just love. Anyways, I'm, so it shook her foundation. Not that she doubts herself, because she doesn't. But she says, the fact that I was like, I'm not able to stand up. I don't know. I guess it just gave her some doubt. So what do you have to say, to situations like that?
Give her a little time, because see, everything that happens to us enters the emotional side of our brain first. That's the survival side of our brain. You take a small child doesn't think, they only feel.
Okay.
All right. And so they feel cold, wet, or hungry, and they yell, which is having a voice. Then that's the beginning of trust. And if somebody takes care of them, that builds trust, and they yell and somebody takes care of them. But if you've got an 18-year-old that's cold, wet, and hungry and still yelling, they haven't developed the logical side of their brain. All right. But what we have to realize, even for you and I, every event that happens to us is going to come into the emotional side of our brain first, which is the downstairs of your house. The upstairs of your house is the logical side of your brain if it's been developed. Okay, so you allow your feelings to come down before you react, and then you think it through logically, and you say, okay, you know what? I was shook up by what the preacher said, but in 2 weeks or a month, you're gonna come back stronger. You're gonna say, I heard his energy change.
Yes.
I know that he was operating from a different spirit. Let me present this on the podcast. Now, I used to say, now critical thinking skills is another level above that. That is when you ask questions and you do thought experiments. And you come home from your job at the end of the day, maybe you're in construction, and you say, we built this house like we always built this house, but I've been having this brainstorm. If we would use a different system, I wonder if it would be faster and better. And so you go through that all in your mind. You map that all out. Freddie's going to be over here. Peter's going to be here. Tom is going to be here, and I'm going to be here, and we're going to do this. Yeah, let's try that. Okay, so then when you try it, it doesn't work as well as you think it should, and so you tweak it. And so critical thinking skills involves asking questions and looking at results. I used to think that when people developed critical thinking skills, they had it in all areas. But now what I'm realizing, they only have it in the areas that benefit them. So Mennonites have astute critical thinking skills in finances, and they don't do too bad socially, but they dare not ask questions about what they believe because it's not going to advantage them. It's actually going to hurt them. And so they stay as small children in the emotional brain type, in the emotional side of their brain. I mean, when somebody presents a different thought than what they've ever thought, it throws them into survival mode, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, because they're not able to logically think it through. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, I see it with my parents anytime that this is brought up, or my sister that is in the church. So yes.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So thank you everyone thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to the next one.
Thank you for listening. It is an honor to connect with our guests, and we wish the best for them as well as our listeners. Remember to like and subscribe for more episodes. Our People can be found on all major podcast platforms as well as YouTube. If you are interested in sharing your story, please contact us at ourpeoplepodcastteam@gmail.com. Thank you.